we have the first keynote of the afternoon, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Kyle Wiltshire, CEO of TESTA, to come and explore how VPN-driven traffic impacts compliance, exposure, payment risk, and geo-blocking strategy in this talk. Over to you. Welcome, Kyle, please.
VPN, black holes and border wars, access versus enforcement in Asia.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. So my name's Kyle Wiltshire. Great to be back here in SiGMA, Manila. Great to be back in Manila. I'm going to speak today about a topic near and dear to my techie heart, and that's VPN access in our industry and in our part of the world. I don't believe in dumbing it down for the audience. This will be fairly technical. I think you guys will follow though, so let's see. So before I get cooking, who is this guy? What gives him the ability to talk on a topic like this? I'm a founder and CEO with a technical background, which is probably somewhat rare in our industry. I was building global IT systems, network infrastructure, long before we kind of had the cloud to lease them out and make it simple. So I have an idea of how these things all work under the hood. First came to Manila and have been in the Asia gaming scene in some way, shape, or form since 2010. That's when I first came here. I lived here for 7 years. I don't anymore, but I'm back and forth quite constantly. This is my second city. I run 2 businesses that are related to the industry. One deals with bespoke technology projects in Asia Pacific. We mostly look at uptime, performance, security, really specific things you find in this part of the world. And another company I run deals with real-world testing all around the globe. So we have over 2,000 testers now in over 100 countries. We focus completely on gambling products. So what are we going to talk about in the next 10 minutes? First, what a VPN actually is. You know, simple question that I don't think gets answered enough. It's an acronym everybody knows, but what is it when you break it down? What are the risks of VPN usage in a regulated market for both the operators, but also for the players and the regulators themselves? For the operators, we're going to look at some common and advanced methods to actually detect if players are using a VPN. From there, we'll look at some new threats that are emerging with kind of remote traffic or players disguising where they're actually coming from. We'll get into some field data that TESTA's provided, and I'll end with some final recommendations and try to tie it all together. So why are we talking about this today? I'm going to mostly speak from the Philippines market and the regulated market here in the Philippines, but this can apply to any regulated gambling market in the world. The gaming license boundaries here are quite clear. There's no delineation between accessing the website, depositing, placing a wager. Plain and simple, the activity needs to happen within the boundary of the country, needs to happen within the Philippines. If you are accepting any sort of traffic, wagers, activity outside of the country, it's not compliant with the license. So no wager can be taken from a non-Philippines IP. Despite this, VPN usage globally is growing. This used to be maybe a more technical or power user tool. Recent surveys said that over 23% of internet users over 16 have used a VPN in the last year. So it's gone from niche to a tool that most of us probably understand. Similar technologies are growing. We'll cover that a bit later, but there are proxy networks and things that mirror the problem of VPN that are emerging today. So, what are the risks? What does VPN enable? Why is it not good? For the operators, they could be accepting bets from outside of the Philippines. If they are accepting bets or taking traffic from outside of the Philippines, they can face fines of up to 300,000 pesos a day. They could potentially lose a license and even have the ability to seize assets, seize bank accounts, seize equipment, IP, you name it. What are the risks for players? This probably doesn't get covered enough, but as a player, if you are remoting into another location to place bets, to have gambling activity, you are now no longer covered by the terms of service and the license. So even if things go your way and you've got a massive amount you want to withdraw, it's no longer legal. You could lose your winnings upon a withdrawal check. In the Philippines, you could actually face potential criminal liability. I don't think this has ever been exercised, but in the penal code, it makes it clear if you're using an unregistered or using a Philippine site remotely, that's against the law. And you lose the ability to dispute anything, obviously. Again, the terms say that you need to be within the country, so if you don't like how a wager went or you've got some sort of issue with a bonus or whatever, all of it's out the door. Finally, what are the risks to the regulator? Essentially, if they're letting VPN and external bets from outside the market take place, you've got a regulated market, but actually a gray or black market happening within it. You lose the audit trail. It's very hard to follow KYC or individual betting behavior when they're going back and forth across countries. And yeah, essentially a black market within a regulated market, as we said there. So, the big question, and this is where we're going to get a little technical, what is a VPN? An acronym I think a lot of people know, but if we actually break it down, we call it a virtual private network. And what this means is the internet is kind of the world's biggest computer network. It's all broken up into this IP range is part of this country, this IP range is part of this company. A virtual private network lets you build a tunnel of traffic from one location to the other. So in its simplest terms, it's a tunnel between one to the other. It could be a private network to another private network, a public network to another public network. It doesn't really matter. It's traffic taking a different route than what it normally would on the internet. So what are the legit uses for a VPN? If you've been in the corporate world more than a decade or two, your first exposure was probably having some sort of VPN to remote into your corporate office to access a mail server, a file server, some sort of intranet site. You could use VPN for privacy, so if you want to obscure where you actually are in the world, or you don't want to be able to track down a site you're using, you could protect yourself that way. And VPNs are also very useful for security. So when that tunnel is built, the traffic is encrypted. That means it's very, very hard, essentially impossible, to understand the data going back and forth. So if you're on a public Wi-Fi network or at an airport, if you're in some place where there could be a lot of people using a network, sniffing the traffic, VPN is a very good practice to use, a very good technology to use. What are some more nefarious uses of the technology? Hiding or impersonating an IP address, so appearing to come from one place when really you're in another. Accessing blocked or illegal material in a market, so ISPs may have blocked certain content and VPNs can get around them. And fraud, data scraping, bonus abuse, anything to do with kind of large botnets or hacker activity, VPN and proxy usage is very, very common. So they want to obscure the bot activity, they want to hide it. Often you see traffic hopping around quite quickly. So this is where we break it all down. If an operator takes this threat seriously, there's a number of things they can do. We'll kind of start with the lowest complexity, lowest cost, and move our way up the chain here. The easiest thing to start with is what we call GeoIP databases. So you've got companies like MaxMind and other called GeoIP that will actually sell you databases of all the IP space on the internet. This address is Singapore, this address is Canada, this address is US. Additionally, those databases can contain known VPN networks. So they can say, this address, it looks like it came from NordVPN, or this came from private internet access, so you know to block it. Quite simple. Additionally, you can blacklist cloud networks or infrastructure providers. If you've got traffic coming from AWS directly, or Google Cloud, or DigitalOcean or something, it's probably not a home user trying to gamble. It's probably some sort of system that's routing traffic in a particular way, so safe to block. Things get more complicated when you actually use the network equipment. So you can do a network analysis because we were talking about that tunnel before, how traffic is built from one point to another. That leaves a lot of signs that can be investigated. So what we have is something called time to leave or latency. I would expect if I'm in the Philippines using a Philippines site, the traffic would move back and forth pretty quickly. In internet parlance, 50 or 100 milliseconds. If it's 300 or 400 milliseconds, this is a bit of an indicator you could be quite far away from where you are representing yourself to be. There's something called the MTU, which is the size of the packet, the information that's going back and forth. In the internet, this is pretty standard. VPNs use a different size because, as we said earlier, they encrypt the traffic. They need to make extra room for the encryption. So having a non-standard MTU size is not a guarantee someone's using a VPN, but it's a pretty strong indicator. Then you get into things like deep packet inspection, which a lot of firewalls and network equipment can do. Quite expensive to deploy. You need the right people to monitor, balance. It's a set of filters and kind of analytics, but very, very effective. But we're getting into more and more expensive territory now. You can do things with the browser. You know, every phone or computer is going to have a browser that they're accessing things on. You can ask the browser kind of tricky questions and say, hey, we expect that you're in the Philippines, but your language is in Thai and your time zone is off by an hour. That's odd, right? You can do reverse lookups where you ask the browser for information about DNS and say, what are you reporting versus what's actually reporting through the network stack. So again, it's a number of little factors that maybe individually don't point to a smoking gun, but collectively can be used to determine if traffic's legitimate or not. Eventually, we get into kind of what we call an orchestrated defense. So we take all of these data points and using some form of algorithm or AI engine, you score it based on risk. You say, how likely is this to be remote traffic versus legitimate traffic? This is obviously a lot more expensive, a lot more complicated, but it can get the leakage rate down to nearly zero. There are industry solutions that can help a lot with this. TransUnion, GeoComply have technology that can actually look at GPS signatures and all sorts of known fraud databases. So those are tools that are available, but they're quite expensive. They're typically seen in markets where the regulation is quite intense and these things are required. Not so much in markets where you're just best effort, GeoIP type of thing. So, what are some new threats that are emerging in this space? Most recently, in Asia, we've seen what we call residential proxy networks. So as I was saying, VPNs are typically companies or organizations that have a set of infrastructure. You can at least determine that they've got, you know, these IP addresses, this equipment. Recently, residential proxy networks are basically networks of people leasing their own computers to routing traffic around. So in the Philippines context, I've got a phone or a computer on a PLDT or Globe connection. I'm openly leasing it so that the traffic can flow through. It's especially common in Asia because bandwidth is fairly cheap, and it's a simple way to make a few dollars. People are a little more trusting. These type of networks are much harder to detect than VPNs because you can't kind of nail it down with GeoIP. You need some of those more advanced solutions we talked about earlier. So on this topic, using some of our TESTA crowd testing network, we took a look at 14 operators in the Philippines, who we didn't name here, but we looked at 4 different countries and decided, can we actually access these sites remotely? So in the red, you see that we tried to load the site from Thailand, Taiwan, Vietnam, Brazil, etc. And it didn't work. And then we tried the VPN, it also didn't work. So all of those are shaded red. The yellows, it successfully blocked us when we first tried. Once we turned on VPN, it actually worked. And that one green, maybe green wasn't the best color because it's the worst, they allowed traffic in from many places. So if you find that data interesting, please find me after the show, inquire with TESTA. We can tell you a bit more about how it was done and the results there. Wrapping everything up, some final recommendations. As you can see, there's a spectrum of cost and complexity to dealing with this problem. What you want to action for yourself really depends on the risk to the company, the size of the business, the type of regulation you're facing. We talked mostly about the Philippines context today, but different licenses have different requirements. The good news is this investment can go across markets. So once you've set up this equipment and built these type of capabilities, the marginal cost of bringing it to another location is not much higher, fairly simple. GeoIP and databases are a basic starting point. They're cheap, they're simple, they're easy to integrate. I would say it's the 80-20 rule. You're getting about 80% of the impact with 20% of the effort with them. If you are facing further issues or pressure, then you get more down to the chain into more complicated solutions. network analysis, advanced AI and fingerprinting. These are all what happens at the next level. So the two companies I represent, Gigantech and TESTA, if you find either of what we do interesting, is that me or something else? Gigantech, we deal with custom infrastructure and technology projects in the region. TESTA, crowd testing all over the world. Please check us out, inquire. If you see me at the show, feel free to come up as well. Thanks a lot for your time and enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you so much to Kyle. Kyle, can I just tell you, I really was like totally involved in that. I didn't know what VPN was, and now I do. I feel like a genius this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed. And I would just echo Carl's thoughts. If you do want to know more, grab Carl and have a conversation with him.